With the recent release of Ironheart, Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe has officially concluded, which means it's time to rank all 14 projects in this phase of the MCU from my least favourite to my favourite. Hello and welcome to Cinemaze, and if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to see more rankings like this and to help me get to 9,000 subscribers. I'm almost there. As always with my rankings, I first need to set out my criteria for what I'm going to be including, and in this case, it's pretty easy. Any TV series or movie released in Phase 5 of the MCU, which started with Quantumania and ended with Ironheart. I won't be including I Am Groot Series 2, it's just impossible to rank a series of 3-minute shorts aimed at children compared with full-length shows and movies, but other than that, anything else is allowed. Also, for some reason, X-Men 97 doesn't count as Phase 5 despite it being made by Marvel Studios and being released within this time frame. And it's extra weird because there are other projects outside of the main universe which are included, but if you're wondering why that's not here, that's why. But it certainly would end up high up this list if I were to include it. With that out of the way, let's get right into the ranking. Number 14, Secret Invasion. Coming in last place, we have Secret Invasion, and not only is it the worst thing in Phase 5, I think it's the worst thing in the MCU full stop. It's painfully slow, which would be fine if there was actually a payoff here, but there isn't. Nothing leads to anything interesting. Characters die for basically no reason. The big twist, which Avenger is a Skrull, is painfully obvious because there is only one Avenger in the show. It just has the worst final fight in any MCU project with two characters who have literally every superpower in the MCU. It's laughable, especially for a show that starts off extremely grounded. While the Marvel Disney Plus shows have been hit or miss, I'd still recommend all of them because people might find something in there to enjoy. But Secret Invasion is the first Marvel project that I would say just don't bother with it. Seriously, skip it. It fails its characters, their arcs, and massively fails the unique premise of the entire show, and it ends up wasting a comic book storyline that could have been so much more. Number 13, Ant-Man and The Wasp: Quantumania. The first Phase 5 show came in last place, and the first Phase 5 movie comes in next with Quantumania. It's not a total failure like Secret Invasion, but it's still a misfire, especially as an Ant-Man movie. Elevating Scott Lang to a more important role could have worked, but this wasn't the way to do it. Having the whole movie take place in the quantum realm removes any sense of scale. Is he big? Is he small? It no longer makes sense, and the film just looks awful. Just a really ugly movie to watch. Using this as the film to launch Kang was a bizarre choice. Having him get defeated by one of the more jokey, weaker Avengers, what were they thinking? There's no stakes here, which is disappointing, especially compared with most third MCU movies that usually brings emotional weight, stakes, or some kind of loss. But here, Scott ends up exactly where he started, and the post-credit scene won't even get paid off. At the time, I didn't like this film that much, but at least Kang was interesting, right? Well, not anymore, because that character's gone, and so even the best part of the film means nothing now. Number 12, What If Seasons 2 and 3. We got 2 seasons of What If in Phase 5, and they both left me feeling the same. There's some good episodes, there's some bad, and they all end with a pretty forced team up, and there's an overall feeling of wasted potential. I've never needed the team up at the end of each season, and maybe it could have worked as a one-off conclusion to all 3 seasons, but weirdly, the team ups got worse with each season. Like the season 3 team up has barely any connection to the episodes and the characters that we met in season 3, so it feels even more forced than usual. The episode quality is so inconsistent, it's hard to rank this any higher, and I'll just jump into rewatching the episodes that I enjoyed rather than the whole season. Across both seasons, there were some cool premises, but it also feels like they could be doing way more interesting stuff, and with this show only lasting 3 seasons, it ends up feeling like this show could have been so much more. Plus, both seasons 2 and 3 feel inferior to the already flawed season 1. Number 11, Echo. Echo feels like a tale of 2 shows, 2 completely different shows mashed together in the editing room. On one hand, you have a TV MA grounded story set in New York following the event of Hawkeye connecting to Maya's past with the Kingpin and really tying into that Netflix Daredevil tone. On the other hand, there's a completely different show about Echo's Native American heritage, exploring her family in Oklahoma with a more supernatural tone and giving Maya powers. And these 2 shows do not work together at all. The more mature, grounded New York Kingpin-based story is far more interesting to me, and it's far more in line with what made the character interesting in Hawkeye. She is a normal person, a grounded character who overcomes the odds against her, who doesn't let her disabilities hold her back, all down to pure skill. When they start throwing magic powers connected to her ancestors, it betrays this premise. The show also feels massively chopped down. It's the only Disney Plus show with 5 episodes. Clearly something in here was messed around in the editing room. It was originally filmed as 8, and you can feel it. I've no desire to rewatch it. The show is fine, and the low end of fine at that. And if we were to see this character again, I would rather them keep to the street level grounded feeling of the character rather than the magical ancestral powers. Number 10, The Marvels. The Marvels is another project that feels completely reworked in the editing room. It feels like a movie with no clear creative vision. I don't know what this movie is trying to be. Tonally, it's all over the place, and it's the same thing with its main character. They continue to not know what to do with Brie Larson's Captain Marvel. She's giving a good performance, but her characterization is all over the place. They clearly do not know or have no idea who this character is in the MCU. I also think this has the worst villain in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, because this time I think there's actually something interesting here on paper with a villain who is connected to the first Captain Marvel movie and determined to right the wrongs Captain Marvel did to her people. But all of that is lost in just a terrible performance, which is emotionless, an unblinking robotic performance that just feels like an even worse version of Ronan the Accuser. Now, the real standout here is Ms. Marvel, who brings so much fun and energy to this film, and it's that performance that makes this movie more enjoyable for me to watch than the first Captain Marvel movie, which I think is just boring, and at least this one's pretty short. Number 9, Ironheart. I went into Ironheart not optimistic. The character didn't win me over in Wakanda Forever, the trailers didn't look great, and the fact Marvel was sitting on this finished product for years and then dumped all the episodes in 2 weeks really worried me. And at first, this worry was justified. Normally, Marvel shows have a really strong episode 1 that hooks me, and then the show falls apart later. But episode 1 here was really bad. It felt both way too long, but also too fast-paced, speeding through plot point. It completely failed the classic show don't tell rule, over-explaining everything with heavy-handed exposition and did nothing to make me care for the titular character. While episode 2 was not as bad, it continued to have poor writing and felt too long, and I just didn't care for the relationship between Riri and the AI. Episode 3 had more writing issues, like there's even a moment where an item is needed, and then they just have the designs for it, and another character says, well, that's convenient, and then it moves on. Like, that's really lazy writing, and you can't just call this out and get away with it like it's a Deadpool movie. But episode 3 does end with a decent heist that begins to set Riri up as a more interesting character, making tough decisions that clash with her morals, while setting up the Hood to be a very compelling villain. And from there, the show just continued to get better. Riri continues to make bad choices, and you begin to realize that's the whole point. I thought they'd do the classic thing like WandaVision and just ignore all the bad choices by the end of the show to make the hero feel more heroic. But no, here the show knows she's a bad person, addresses this, and then ends up with her making an even worse choice. It's not a hero's journey, it's a Greek tragedy. That's something new for Marvel, and I respect it. And Mephisto, look, we all knew he was coming, so the bait and switch with Dormammu was clearly a fake, but it is a nice comic reference because he is the one who's behind the Hood in the comic. Now, I was worried a bit about Mephisto's inclusion because it can often feel like a cop-out. It was the devil all along, but it really worked here. He wasn't the focus, he wasn't a Deus Ex Machina, he was a driving force behind the show, but the characters still made their own decisions. The performance was great with these different personalities manipulating his different victims, and he really found the right line between creepy, campy, and seasoned. Overall, the ending of Ironheart worked for me, and it's doing something extremely new and interesting in the MCU, and I really appreciate that, and that's what gets it so high up the list, and I hope to see the likes of Ironheart stain the Hood, and of course Mephisto again. However, I also can't deny that I really didn't like the first 2 hours of this show, and I thought they were actually quite terrible, so that's what holds it back from getting any higher. Number 8, Captain America Brave New World. Brave New World is another frustrating movie that you can feel has been reworked, but in the case of this one, I find the things it is doing far more interesting, and that's what gets it higher up this list. I think the real standout here is Harrison Ford coming in as President Ross. He's clearly having a great time, and he brings a lot of energy to this role. He also adds a more relatable side of the character, which we've never seen before. I also thought Isaiah Bradley brought a lot of heart and emotion to this film. What doesn't work is the villain. The villain is supposed to be one of the smartest characters, and he just ends up feeling dumb. And with such a long wait to see this character, it just feels disappointing. There's solid grounded action and some great aerial sequences, but on the other hand, there's also some really badly choppy edited action and terrible CGI at times. What I really like here is that it actually felt like an MCU movie. Not a great one, but a movie that took place in the classic MCU, connecting the past projects and setting up some ideas for the future. That is what has been missing from Phase 4 and 5, and so it's nice to have that, and that's what gets it so high up this list. Number 7, Agatha All Along. When we get into these top 7, I think all of these are great. Agatha All Along was a project no one asked for, myself included. I loved WandaVision, but a spin-off for Agatha felt unnecessary, and yet it proved me wrong. Despite the title, this show is as much about Billy Maximoff, and that's where the magic is. Billy's the emotional core, and adapting his convoluted comic origin was always going to be tough, but this show streamlines it really well. For the start of the show, the genre-hopping stuff felt random, and Agatha's carefree, blasé attitude was getting aggravating. But all of that worked when you get to episode episode 8's twist reveal that it was a hex all along. Episode 7 with Lilly's trial and backstory, that is one of the best singular Disney Plus episodes, full stop. If you skip this because it sounded like filler, I get it, but Agatha All Along ends up being a worthy successor to WandaVision and definitely justifies its existence. The only reason it doesn't get higher up this list is personal taste. A show about singing witches is never gonna be my favorite, no matter how good it is, but I'd still highly recommend checking this one out. Number 6, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. This show felt like Marvel giving us a glimpse of what their Spider-Man would have looked like without Sony, and in many ways, it's actually stronger. From Otto Octavius to Oscorp to a brilliant take on Norman Osborn, it's bursting with classic Spider-Man elements that MCU Spider-Man has barely touched. There's some really cool animated action here. Scorpion is used in a way that feels like a real threat, and Tombstone was way more compelling than I've ever expected that character to be. That said, what does hold it back at times are some of the changes they make to the Spider-Man mythos. His inner circle here is wildly different than usual, and it just doesn't feel necessary to make some of those changes. The MCU references here, Civil War, Sokovia Accords, Charlie Cox's Daredevil, it all feels like leftovers from when this was meant to be canon, and that can be distracting early on, and it starts off making me wish this was still a canon origin story. But once the show starts carving its own path, it finds real strength in doing these things differently, and you realize the MCU connections are actually kind of holding it back. My only major gripe, you never really understand why this Peter Parker is Spider-Man. It lacks that clear motivation. Still, it's a fresh, modern spin that captures the heart of the character, and it gives us one of the best versions of Norman Osborn, and we haven't even seen him suit up yet. It leaves me genuinely hyped for season 2, though I do have some reservations about them including Spider-Gwen. Number 5, Daredevil Born Again. Kicking off the top 5 is Daredevil Born Again, a show that is clearly flawed, but one that I can't help but enjoy either way. This isn't as good as any of the Netflix seasons, but I think it gets pretty close at times. This season isn't perfect, but given the chaotic production, it's impressive how cohesive and engaging this actually turned out to be. That's largely thanks to the new creative team who clearly understood what worked, mainly Charlie Cox's Daredevil and Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin. Their mirrored arcs showing the slow descent back into Daredevil and Kingpin drive the show with real momentum, and they have great energy on screen with each other and the other cast members. And while this show might not be as consistent as something like Agatha All Along, I just prefer these characters and it's always great to see them. But the absence of Foggy and Karen is a major loss. Their replacements just don't have the same impact, and it's hard to not imagine how much better their scenes would have been if they kept the original supporting cast. Episodes 2 to 4 had a great slow burn with Matt's return to Daredevil and the White Tiger arc, but episodes 5 to 7 lost a lot of steam. Muse had potential, but he was completely underused. At that point, it felt solid, but not quite special. Then episode 8 happened. That was incredible. Bullseye's return, the chaos between Matt and Fisk, and the what will happen next feeling of that episode. It felt like peak Daredevil. That finale delivered brutal Punisher action, the most violent scene we've ever seen in the MCU, and Karen's return really highlighted how much she was missed. Overall, a good season with some standout moments carried by powerhouse performances. Unlike a lot of MCU shows, I'd happily rewatch all of this one again. It's flawed, sure, but it has me excited for season 2, especially now that the new team is working from a clean slate. I really want to see what they can cook up from fresh. Number 4, Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool and Wolverine was exactly what it needed to be. A fun return for Deadpool, joining the MCU without toning down his humor, while reintroducing Hugh Jackman's Wolverine in a way that doesn't ruin Logan's ending. Two actors play off each other brilliantly. It's funny, it has charm, some cool action, and well executed cameos. The cameos work because the movie doesn't rely on them. The pacing doesn't grind to a halt just to force them in here. They actually make sense within the movie and its themes. It acts as an effective conclusion for the Fox X-Men films, more so than it does the next step for the MCU, and it's surprisingly self-contained for a multiverse film. Now, it's not perfect. Like No Way Home, the setup here is thin. Some elements don't fully make sense, and it can feel slightly weak on rewatch, but because it is a comedy, I can be a bit more forgiving for some of the weaker plot elements. The emphasis here is on laughs over story, and that's why it's able to get this high. However, it doesn't get any higher because it's not as solid from a plot or character perspective as the next 3 projects. Number 3, Loki Season 2. Kicking off the top 3 is the best MCU Disney Plus show we've had so far with Loki Season 2. Now, Season 1 was great, but it felt incomplete. It was very much a Part 1. But with the conclusion with Part 2, it cements itself as the best MCU series. What makes it work is everything feels planned here. It doesn't feel rewritten or forced in action sequences. It's a contained, thoughtful character study, telling a specific story and executing that perfectly. Mobius, Sylvie, OB, Toby, the Kang variants, they all feel meaningful additions to Loki's story. But what truly makes this stand out is how it completes Loki's arc. In Infinity War, he died for his brother. In this series, he sacrifices himself for the multiverse. He gets what he wanted, power, a throne, purpose, but now he sees it as a burden, not a reward. It's powerful and poetic. The ending ties everything together in ways I never saw coming. It outsmarted me. It didn't feel predictable or dumb like many other Disney Plus shows. And that's what makes great storytelling. Being surprised, being moved, and seeing characters evolve in meaningful ways that you'd never expect. The way season 2 ties back into season 1 with Loki's original conversation with Mobius, going back into the He Who Remains plan, and even back to where Loki finished the first Thor movie. It's just really satisfying and really effective. And it feels planned out from the start, something Marvel has lost in the multiverse saga, that sense of planning and overarching story. It delivered a satisfying conclusion, that is, until Doomsday. Really interesting to see how Loki ties into that. Number 2, Thunderbolts. At number 2, we have the Thunderbolts. It has a very grounded, serious tone and explored more mature themes, making it a Marvel movie with an actual message about mental health. The tone felt balanced, the action felt realistic and practical, and the movie had a distinct visual style, things that have felt missing from recent MCU entries. The characters and their stories were at the forefront, really elevating some of these characters into key members of the universe going forwards, and really bringing the Sentry to life in a way that works. He's a super interesting character in the comics, but his story is so convoluted, but they made it work, and now I've gone back and read a bunch of Sentry runs, and I can now understand the comic character better thanks to Lewis Pullman's performance bringing him to life. Much like Brave New World, it finally felt like we got a movie that takes place properly in the MCU, and we can begin to form connections between multiple projects, paying off past threads while setting up an exciting future. It's an extremely well-made movie that puts its characters first and leaves me wanting more from them and from the universe. Again, I can't wait to see how this ties into Doomsday and the director's future work on the X-Men in the MCU. But it doesn't quite reach the top spot because that's a movie about conclusions rather than setup, with number 1, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Coming in at number 1, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which for me is the best movie of the multiverse saga. It delivered a surprisingly satisfying conclusion with emotional weight, strong character arcs, and a clear vision from James Gunn. While Guardians 2 left a sour taste, this one returned to the heart of the first film, an emotional core without losing the joy and family dynamic, and it even recontextualizes Guardians 2, deepening our understanding of the team. The action is the best in the trilogy, with the hallway scene as a standout, and while the villain isn't the MCU's strongest, it is the best in this trilogy. The stakes here feel real despite no major deaths. The team splitting up adds weight without needing a shocking loss. Much like Thunderbolts, this movie has something to say, touching on some heavy themes, but what gets it to the top spot is the effectiveness of these arcs and their conclusion. Rocket's arc, Drax's self-acceptance, and Nebula's growth, they were all surprising directions to take the characters, but they all made sense, and they all felt earned and planned. Similar to Thunderbolts, the practical sets, tight storytelling, and emotional depth makes this feel different from most modern MCU films, but it's that effective conclusion that lands perfectly for me, proving that a well-crafted movie still resonates, and that's why Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 comes in at number 1. I hope you enjoyed my ranking. Let me know your rankings down in the comments below. What's your favorite project in phase 5? If you enjoyed this, please give the video a like. It helps my channel out so much. And if you're new around here, be sure to subscribe. I've got some major videos coming up, like a Superman and Fantastic Four suit rankings. So subscribe to see those and to help me hit 10,000 subscribers this year. But for now, thanks for watching Cinemaze.